If you happen to be on vacation in the Orlando area and you go into the many amusement parks that you see in Orlando, whether it's Universal or Disney, there are areas that are just filled with Today we're going to be talking about bromeliads, and bromeliads in three separate settings. Very tropical plants, very pretty plants, a little bit slow growing plants, but they're unique for your habitat or just for somewhere in your house. My name is Kim. I'm a member of the Tye-Dyed plant team, and let me show you two different species of bromeliads. The neat thing and the characteristic thing about bromeliads is that they grow up kind of forked, and as they do that, they actually create a little bit of a cup inside each of the plantlets. A little easier to see on the larger one here. And these cups like to stay very, very moist. Moist for a couple reasons. Number one, a flower of varying sizes, usually quite large, will come out of that cup. Very, very slow growing. Once you see the bud, it'll be weeks or months before that finally blooms. Secondly, there are certain species of frogs that actually will find that habitat very conducive to laying their eggs. So it's not unusual to see little spots inside those cups, and those are actually frog eggs. They're very tropical, as I said. Some can be planted in dirt which has a good amount of drainage. Others will be planted more in a sphagnum moss kind of environment, and that keeps them nice and moist. This is one of our larger bromeliads, and you can see it's actually reproducing quite well. These will put out what we call pups, just the smaller bromeliads. Let me just pull this out so you can get a better look. So here's the large one, which has put out a pup which is growing significantly well, which has put out another pup which is growing significantly well. And you can propagate these by clipping off the pups, and I'll show you a good example of that in just a little bit. You will see bromeliads if you happen to be on vacation in the Orlando area and you go into the many amusement parks that you see in Orlando, whether it's Universal or Disney. There are areas that are just filled with bromeliads, generally not flowering, but just in the green mode. And as I said, when they flower, that flower gets quite high, and once the flower dies, the main plant will die, but by then it will have put out some pups, and the pups will continue to live. In terms of plant care, you need to keep these very moist, probably watering 2 or 3 times a week, and on a daily basis, we like to mist them, keep a little bit of moisture, especially in the cups, to keep those very, very moist. From a lighting perspective, we're in a tropical environment, so generally speaking, your bromeliads like a lot of filtered light. That tropical environment generally means moisture, as I've said before, so it's getting direct, really, really hot sunlight, not going to do well. Mottled sunlight, a little bit of sunlight, maybe early morning, but you don't want to get it in direct sunlight. It just needs to have a fair amount of shade in order to prosper. Otherwise, you'll start seeing the ends of your leaves get a little bit brown. That means you're suffering it by getting it just too much direct sunlight. From a perspective of growing your others, let me show you an example here. This is one of our larger, what we call motherships, or the mother plant. It's just filled with bromeliads that at the appropriate time can be harvested. You can see we've been doing some harvesting here in front. They are relatively easy to pull out, and here's a good example of one that if we were to do that, you've got your larger bromeliad right here, and it has a good sized pup that is right next to it. So when we were ready to harvest this, we'd give it a good yank up high, and then take our pruner and just get down very low and go ahead and cut it at the U shape. Then go ahead and we would plant it immediately in sphagnum moss. But we have several of these mother plants around the shop, and as we sell the other ones, we'll go ahead and just pull these out, reharvest, and put these out for display. These mother plants are not for sale, but they're just a great example of how your bromeliad can just grow out in the wild in large, large clumps. And they just are very, very hardy, very aggressive, and they work well in that tropical environment. We also will take these many times as we build our vivariums, which is a tropical environment, and we'll place our bromeliads of different sizes in the vivariums. And we've got a couple of vivariums that have that going on right now. Let's just walk across the store and I'll show you what those look like. So here you can see in one of our tropical vivariums where we have two different sized bromeliads. We have a smaller one and we have the larger one. And what we've done in order to make sure these are in the right growing environment is we have our piece of cork. We've actually drilled the hole. The bottom of that bromeliad, as you may have recalled from the other plants, has a little stolon, a little stem, and we just insert that stem into that hole. And then if it's a loose fit, we'll put a little bit of hot glue on there, and then we'll put some sphagnum moss around the sides, and that gives it a great growing environment. Here you've got the cork as a growing environment, and you have the sphagnum moss as a growing environment. The Spanish moss is just from a decorative perspective, not really necessary for the growing environment of the bromeliad itself. But we've got a nice moist environment, we've got cork, we've got the sphagnum moss, and then on a daily basis we'll not only water, but we'll also make sure this stays nice and moist by misting into the cup. So there's a variety of different looks at our bromeliads, just a great tropical addition to your environment, to your habitat, to your tanks, anywhere you might use them. Bromeliads here at the Tye-Dyed Iguana.